as you go through it. And this is my third Spotlight interview this week. So it's brilliant to be joined by the lovely, fantastic Kim Shepherd as well. And Kim, these interviews, just to remind anybody that's on tonight, I'm just doing a series of discussions called Spotlight 20. And actually, we're going to have 20 interviews before Christmas now with a range of people from performing arts and creative industries, as well, a whole range of different careers and jobs and pathways and things as well. And some people have asked again, who are the audience that might be watching or listening in to these interviews? And it could be people that are in training, that are thinking about training in the future as well, that are maybe young participants that are excited about what they do in the performing arts and maybe considering a career in that. We've got youth theatre leaders that are watching in some places. We've got teachers that are watching as well. And so they can take some information back. We've got friends, we've got family, we've got other people who are being interviewed. So it's quite a plethora of people. And as I say, you could, during the recording session, we might have 2, we might have 20. But the idea is it's recorded for people to tune into later. Okay. So I've got a range of questions. We'll have a wee 40-minute discussion. So I'm just going to change the way I'm viewing this actually a second. Obviously, my fantastic technical abilities come to the fore during this as well. So Kim Shepherd, actress of musicals, plays, films, pantomimes as well. I was just reading earlier on, you've been the lead vocalist of Cut the Cake as well, which was voted the best wedding band of the year in Scotland, and you've been there with them for 13 years. Yeah. A huge number of musicals and films and everything, and we can get into that. You also perform with Mixtape. You were in Glasgow Girls. You've been in Beyond the Barricade. I saw you in Carnegie, the musical as well. I was walking past the big statue of Andrew Carnegie yesterday, and up in Pittencrieff, and he would have been 185 yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday!
I think you could have popped out and done a wee service.
I know, could have just been like,
in the park or something. And obviously, I also know that you're famous for your TikToks. I mean, that you've been doing during lockdown. So I know you've done like really good films, and obviously your own filming, which is your TikTok career that you've just taken to a new level during this year. So I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask you a quick question. We're not going to dwell on the current situation, but I have been asking everybody in terms of pandemic, etc. How's that really affected you, and in terms of your working life and things?
Yeah. So, like you said, I've been with Cut the Cake for 13 or so years now, and usually we are. What month is this? This is November.
November now. We're at usually November. Yeah.
Yeah, we're usually coming to the end of our really busy period just now, and we've normally had a mad summer, which is how it normally goes. But this year everything came to a screeching halt in March, so we've not gigged or seen each other since March, which is the longest in the 13 years we've not seen each other or done anything.
How many people are in the band then?
It's 5 of us in the band. Yeah. And that's and the whole time we've been together, that's the longest we've gone. So it's weird, and like I just signed with a new agent this year and was kind of kicked off the year being like, okay, let's go and like make it happen, and then COVID. So I don't know whether that's a sign.
That's a good way to do it. COVID.
Yeah.
Then it does happen.
Yeah, that's someone going, nah, Kim, give up.
No. And what, I mean, a friend of mine has a wedding band as well, and he said that so many things have kind of been rescheduled and then rescheduled again. And of course, then you have to get all the stars to kind of align with venues and bands and cars and photographers. So I suppose there'll be like a massive backlog or flurry of things waiting to happen when it all gets better. Or there's
a large portion of our gigs we were able to reschedule to next year or the year after, but there are a couple of them who, like you say, because maybe the venue wasn't available or the photographer wasn't available, that they've had to start looking at other dates, which then meant that we couldn't do it. So we've lost a wee handful of gigs, but as much as it's been hard and as much as it's been really difficult for like financially and everything, I just sort of keep going, but everyone that I care about as well, so that's okay.
I think there's
like,
context in everything, isn't there? You just have to think, oh, that's annoying that that's not happening anymore. But in the reality of everything, absolutely. Oh, Kim, are you there? Is it me that's frozen? Just pause a second. I just froze a minute there. It was me that. Okay, so one thing that I saw the other day was that you were Zooming for an audition, just on your Facebook page, your Instagram, you'd posted something about, aren't things different these days? So another kind of, because of 2020 and circumstances, that is something that's totally different then at the moment. So do you just talk through that? What have you been up to on Zoom?
Sure. So obviously, like in recent years, self-taping has become a bit more popular for castings and things like that. But even more so this year, because no one, you can't get in the room with people, you can't meet people because of all the different restrictions. So yeah, there's been self-taping galore. Everyone's having to kind of make little studios out of their living rooms or bedrooms, or you've got to find like the plainest wall in your house,
or a corner of your living room.
Whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, like this.
Whatever. Yeah, and then it was mad though, because it wasn't like a self-tape. This one, it was like having a like auditioning like this over, and I've never done that before, but it was.
So this isn't a showreel or a normal thing. This is very much because of the current situation. This is you auditioning like this.
Yeah.
What did you have to do then? What was it for? If you can tell us a bit, what was it for, and how is that different?
So it was for a short film, and anytime, I mean, I've not got like masses and masses of film experience, but anytime I've done anything like that before, usually I've met people, or you've sent, you've actually been in the room with them, or you've sent them your tape of the scene that they want you to do. But yeah, so this was, he directors at one end and I'm at the other, and it was good though, because then at least you get, without actually meeting the person, you can still get a nice vibe. You can kind of vibe off them and figure out, oh, well, like, he seems nice, or she seems nice, or yeah.
And when you go to actually performing in this context as an audition, is that, I mean, you were auditioning for film.
Yeah.
So was that easier than it would have been if you felt you were auditioning for a musical or a play or a?
Probably, because obviously the skill set's slightly different. It's not, I'm talking like I'm like, oh yeah, the skill set's different on my 17 Oscar winning performances. But
listen, I'm saying nothing, but I might be on Netflix for this. We could be going syndicated. Never see, never end. Right.
But for live theatre, everything's a bit bigger and everything's a bit more kind of exaggerated, because it's got to get all the way to the back of the room. But for anything on film, it can be so tiny, it can be really subtle. It's just it's closer to how you are in real life. So it's probably doing it over Zoom was probably easier,
rather than sitting on a chair 12 feet away in a studio room or something like that.
Because I was aware that, like, to sort of make it look like I was making eye contact with them, it had to be like this, like straight into the camera. So I actually found it quite beneficial. So hopefully it pays off.
Well, good luck. And by the time this goes out, I'm sure you'll have heard about it by then as well. So all the best to you. Okay, so part of these discussions as well are about finding out how people got to where they are in terms of what they're doing now. And obviously you do a range of different things as a versatile performer as well. But where did it all start for you?
So,
I was born.
Back when I was 15, I joined a local theatre company and did a production of Scrooge, and was just like, chorister number 3, coming forward and doing a little bit of a carol and then going to the back again. But I've always been into performing and singing, and one of those annoying kids, it's like, Mom, watch me, like. And yeah, did Scrooge, and then the following year, not 2015, 2005, then the following year, no, hold on.
Is that so? Scrooge, you said you were 15.
Yeah, so Scrooge, 2005. Yeah, yeah. Then 2006, I went to a sort of a meeting for a new theatre company that was forming called Limelight. And they were doing Little Shop.
Okay.
And I went along to that and was thinking, I'll just be in the chorus. It'll be great. I'll have a great time. There's a few people I know that are going to be doing it, so it's going to be like Scrooge all over again. And during the ensemble auditions, it was Susie Dumbrick who was directing it, and she was sort of hovering behind me at one point. And I thought, what's going on? But then at the end of the day, she said, would you take home the stuff for Audrey and have a listen? And I was like,
wow.
Right.
Okay.
So
you hadn't really considered, you weren't thinking about Audition for Audrey?
No, I thought, if anything, I'll maybe go for one of the Ronettes. Now,
maybe just for viewers that aren't aware of the show, Audrey is a lead in Little Shop of Horrors. It's not somebody that was at the audition. Could you take this home for Audrey? She's away on the bus. Thank you, Kim. We don't need to do more. So it was actually to go for the lead part. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I sort of went back and was like, practice. Long story short, ended up getting it. And the night that they phoned me to tell me that I got it, my friend who lived up the street, Fiona had phoned me and said, oh, you would like to offer you the part. And I was like, okay, I like burst out crying, and then phoned to my friend, and she came running down. It was like, you would think that I'd just like won an Oscar or something like that.
That's what it would feel like. Absolutely.
Running down the street, and I was like, I got it. And that was the start of everything, really, because that kind of taught me that I'm okay at this, actually. Like I can maybe do something with this. So yeah, I did most of my time, like when I was a teenager, like doing like amateur theatre and stuff like that, and loving it. And then.
So how do you go from there? Or how did you go? Sorry, because everyone's different. So that was very much something you were doing when you were at school. You developed this love of performing. Well, obviously you decided at some point to take it further.
Yeah.
So was that supported and encouraged, or did you have a careers person that just said, oh, it'll never work, it'll never happen? Or how did that come about for you?
Pretty much every careers person said that to me. Like since I was little, and I kept going, I want to be a singer. When I grow up, I want to be a singer. And anytime I said to, any teacher or anything, going, oh, yeah, no, I'll be a singer. They'd be like, okay. Right, what do you really want to do? And I'm like, no, I want to be a singer. Yeah. So my whole time at school was geared around that. It was, I took drama. Funnily enough, I didn't take music, but yeah, and then I got accepted into the first musical theatre course at Adam Smith College. Well, Fife College now, but it was Adam Smith back then.
Okay, wow.
So yeah, that's kind of where it went from, this is a hobby, to right, I'm gearing up to do this as a, like, for a living now, sort of thing, taking it a bit more seriously.
And you got into the course?
Yeah.
And how long? Tell us about your course then. How it was the first cohort, was it, of the musical theatre?
Yeah. So the year group that I was in for that one, this was the first time they ran the musical theatre course. So we were sort of the guinea pigs for the whole thing, which was great in some instances because it meant that we could kind of help shape how it went for future students of the course. And we all loved it because we were all musical theatre geeks who were getting to spend all day, every day singing musical theatre songs.
That's really interesting, that point, because I suppose that is the first time outside youth theatre or Limelight or community theatre or something, for the first time, day in, day out, you're spending it with people that do your thing as well. You're not one of a group of people in school that don't do it or whatever. So that must be exciting when you go on to train. And
it was great. And obviously then you get into, while you're at college, you get into the way of doing rehearsals that last for the whole day. You get into the run of doing more than one show a day for more than a week and things like that. So the gear, there's a definite gear change between sort of, you know, having it as a hobby and then thinking, right, I'm maybe going to take this a bit further now.
So if those were some of the best things about going on to training, the way that you did, what were there inevitably challenges or challenging moments within that training as well? Is there anything that you could share with us about that?
Probably one thing that I've probably found since it went from, and I wouldn't just associate this with training, I would just associate this with it becoming a career choice, is that for me anyway, obviously I can't speak to anyone else, but for a little bit of time, the sparkle was kind of taken off it for a little while, you know, because it went from being like this thing that was, oh, you go to the theatre and it's wow, and it's all this kind of this world that you look in on, and you get that escapism from going to the theatre, but then all of a sudden you're sort of seeing behind the curtain, if you like, and then you're like, oh, okay, right. So it's actually, there's some people who are really loving it. Some people are really miserable. Some people have like, oh, there's such and such doing a show with a terrible injury, and she's actually just hobbling through it. You know, it's just you find all the little bits of it, that all the people that really, really work hard to make it work, if that makes any sense. It takes that.
I see what you mean, the sparkle of it, but it also
wonder of it all. But if I'm not saying it makes it less enjoyable, but that would be the only thing that sort of stopped me in my tracks briefly at one point, where I was like, oh no, like I'm not loving this as much as I used to.
And then there's the reality, I suppose, that of it is another job. You know, it is you turn up at this time, you work hard, you have to do your preparation. Once you start a long running thing as you've been in, and you know, it's the discipline of another job. It's not you know, champagne and chocolates and things every day. It's a hard gig, and there's the reality of it, I suppose. Yeah,
and like it is a passion. It's very much a passion, but it's also a job. Yeah. So you do have that. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, here we go, you know, or sometimes you just like any other job, just like any other job. Sometimes you love it, sometimes you're like, ah.
So after training, and okay, current situation aside again, after training, how did you go about then going into professional work? What were the kind of things that you went on to do, and how did you get them?
Okay, so from the year I left school, I had already started singing the year I left college, I'd already started singing with Cut the Cake by that point.
Okay.
Which is the band. And that was already kind of taken up, you know, a couple of nights a week at that point. And that was kind of the start of my, I sing and people pay me, you know, but that's all right, okay. And then you get taught at college how to write cover letters and try and get in touch with agents and things. And then a lovely friend, Donna, she got in touch with her, who was her agent at the time. And we managed to sort of set up a meeting, and I got signed with them. And admittedly, I kind of flung myself in at the deep end.
Okay.
And went from not really doing any auditions at all to, right, you need to go down to London next week, and you're getting seen for, you're meeting David Essex. For my first audition was, you're singing for David Essex for a West End show. Wow. And I was like, what? But that's kind of how I did it. I kind of went out the frying pan into the fire, which took me a wee while to come to, not terms, because that makes it sound like I've struggled, but it's when you come from a small town where everyone's, you know, all your friends are all in the same musical theatre company or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, and you're sitting oh, there's David Essex, oh, and you're sitting in a room where every girl around you looks exactly like you, and you're all going in for the same part, and you're all good, you know, you're all, and you're like, all right, okay, so there's no guarantees here at all, and there's no it's out of
a huge jump. A huge jump to that.
Yeah.
And what about I suppose living up here, and if the West End is still the centre of musical theatre casting, let's say, there's also then that expense of attending auditions, and even some of the private schools, dance schools and things, so a Lane, a Conte, or an Arts Ed or something, you're paying every time to audition, even to get into there, and then you're paying for travel and things. So I suppose go down next Thursday and meet with David Essex, brilliant, but there's a train, there's a plane, there's accommodation, there's huge amounts of kind of things, and I'm going to ask you a really personal question here. Do you think that's affordable for people? Is there help out there to support people on their way to do that? Or is it a game of, well, if you've got the funds and resources to get you there, good. If you don't, that's another barrier.
Again, I can only talk based on my experience, and I would think that it's very much a case of, if you've got the funds, great. If you don't, there'll be someone else that does.
Yeah. So that's a reality as well.
But, okay. So I struggled with that. Like, of course, I could ask to borrow the money, or I could have asked, but yeah, it was.
I know that people have done, you know, they've done concerts to raise money to go to drama schools and things, or to auditions for drama schools and things. But again, it doesn't really stop there. It's the bit after it again, and you're just kind of looking at the system thinking, is it, you know, that's just another difficulty within it, I suppose, to try and get there. But the people I'm hearing from are so determined, and they keep that energy going, that they'll just keep going for it all the time.
Yeah, if you really want it, you will make it work somehow. And that's kind of how my, just very quickly going back to what you're saying about how you, like, when you're at college and things, or when you're starting out doing amateur theatre or whatever, and then you're thinking, oh, I want to go and I want to be in musicals, or I want to be on film or whatever, then it's quite easy to fall into that, oh, this is it, right, I'll get this audition, and then I'll walk right into that, and I'll do this, and oh my god, it'll be great, amazing.
Best pals with Elaine and Ruthie and Patty.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I sat next to her on the train once. I sat next to Shirley Henderson on the train once, and I thought, that's it, I'm best pals with her now. Haven't seen her since. But like getting
the reality of getting there and keeping it going. So tell me then about some of the jobs that you have done, though. So maybe did David Essex not take you up on the offer then? No,
he didn't. No,
okay, well, we'll forget about him for now. So tell me about some of the things, because I know that you have done. I touched on that you've done plays, films, musicals. Tell me about some of the things you've been involved in then.
So, where do we begin? Probably the thing that I do most regularly is Panto. Probably. Okay. Yeah. And that, my first, well, I did a Panto at the Alhambra. And then after that, did three Christmas seasons at the Brunton in Musselburgh.
Yep.
And then I've worked on Fife since then.
That's with Imagine, is it, the production company?
Yeah, so Imagine for the last 3 years, and then it was just on Fife the year before that, at Carnegie Hall. But yeah, so what do you want to know?
So within that, well, you would be doing that right now, wouldn't you? I think
that's what was just
started it. So one thing I want to know about then, as a performer, and I know you from working on Panto and things as well, but if this was Panto season starting, tell me how you would be feeling right now. We're probably just starting or coming midweek of the first week of rehearsals.
Yeah,
but what is ahead? How are you feeling now, and what is ahead of you as a Panto performer?
Okay, so I would look terrible, probably. I would probably
you never look terrible when I've seen you. In the morning, apart from rehearsal, Kim.
Yeah, so this point in rehearsals is normally the point where, for me anyway, in your head, the wheels start to come off a wee bit, because you go in the first week and you're like, this will be great. You're full of energy. You know, you catch up with everyone again that you've not seen since the year before, or things like that. Then you, in the first few days, you start putting the show together, and there's no, right, let's sit around for 3 days and we'll break this all down and let's really like find all the, like, it's just, right, get on your feet, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's it. Oh.
Something come up on your screen.
What happened? Yes.
Oh, I can still see. I was about to say that, yeah, even the last 2 pro pantos we've done together, I'm just thinking, what day is that? This is being filmed on a Thursday night. We would have just met the rest of the cast on Monday,
yep.
Had a quick read through, and tomorrow, Friday, we would be expected to have a very pieced together run of everything.
Of the whole show, yeah.
We would be doing that tomorrow. So I don't think people understand that we would have met on Monday, now have rehearsed kids' dance teams, everything, worked with giant props, never met, and we'd be running it. We would be running it tomorrow. And on Monday next week, we would have a producers run. The producers would be coming up from down south, watching and taking notes of what we'd done in 6 days.
Yeah. So obviously you've got to think long term. This is, the show's not even, you've not even put costumes or lights or set or anything in yet. So you're obviously, by this point, you go in all guns blazing, then you get to a point where you go, I can't keep singing it like this, or I will never make it to the end of the run. So you've got to sort of think about pacing yourself in rehearsals, pacing yourself through what you do before and after each show, before and after each rehearsal, you know, making sure you're eating well, drinking lots of water, getting lots of rest, because you're not going to get too much of that for the next 5-6 weeks.
And Panto is, I mean, I'm one of these people that like one of the biggest Panto fans and celebrates the art of Panto, and particularly the people that do it. It's just such a, I think it's a huge responsibility. It's for some children, it's the first experience they'll ever have of live theatre. But for a Panto performer, I just think it's the medium which is different the most every time. You know, that an audience is completely different at 10 o'clock in the morning one day to 10 o'clock in the morning the next day. You have to switch it back on at 2:30. You have to switch on at 7:30. And if they're not with you, you don't blame them. You've got to work harder. And you're maybe on show 39 by then, and you just have to find that kind of energy. So how do you sustain it? How do you keep it fresh as a performer?
For me, it's, like you say, the audiences can differ so much, and it sounds really like cliche to say it, but they are like another character in the show, the whole audience. I know that a lot of people say that, they go, the audience is the final character and all that, but
it's true. Yeah.
It's true, because if you go out there, especially at 10 o'clock in the morning and everyone's like, then you really have to, it's like from the wings, you really have to run at it to get them. But what does it for me is when you can sort of make eye contact with someone, if they're sitting smiling, that gives me a little boost, and then I'm like, right, this, and like you say, because for kids, this might be the only time that they go to the theatre.
Yeah, you can have a bad day. Yeah.
That's not fair on them. Mm-hmm. So we've all got stuff that goes on, and we've all got days where we would rather not be
dressed as a fairy at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Dressed as a fairy at 10 o'clock in the morning, inside a pantomime cow at 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever.
Oh, let's not talk about pantomime. You had adventures in that last year, that's right.
But that's because I remember how I felt when I went to see a Panto.
Yeah. And
I remember sitting watching Panto at Carnegie Hall and going, and seeing Cinderella and thinking, wow. And just, I remember going backstage to meet her and just being like, oh.
It was like, the most magical thing ever.
And I think that even if there's just one wee girl or one wee boy out there that goes, I loved that, and because of that girl or because of that whatever, then I'm like, great.
Yeah,
And
and there's
I
families
think,
that go every year, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And then they get older, then they take their kids and things. I think just when we were saying about the 10 o'clock in the morning as well, I think one thing I know that a lot of people maybe don't know is that you have more than one panto in your head, even though
yeah,
you're doing, we worked on Jack and the Beanstalk last year, but on certain performances, you actually have to perform a different show
yeah, you might
because
have
there are shorter versions of some things for school days and school trip audiences. And then there's also certainly at the Adam Smith, like a number of theatres now, the relaxed performances that are slightly different. So just what can you talk us through the relaxed performances that a lot of theatres are doing now?
Yeah, so like you say, it's becoming more common for theatres to do these now. So the relaxed performances are for people who might not particularly feel comfortable in a normal theatre environment where everything's really loud and everything's really dark. And there's more freedom for people to get up and move around if they need to. The house lights stay up slightly, and all the big sort of the things that might give people frights or whatever, they're all cut from the show. So
And
that
one number of children, like say with autism and things, that they'll come to
like,
those performances and
people with additional support needs, or just any person or child that might feel more comfortable in a slightly more welcome, less scary environment, you know, because Panto is always really full on, and if you struggle with things like that, then that could be a.
But for the performers, then again, you've got, what show are we doing today? Is it that? Because the
Yeah,
material's pretty similar, but it's less of this, more of that. No flash
yeah,
when you run on at this one. We're not doing that song, and so it's a lot
yeah.
to think about. Yeah,
You have to listen. You have to listen constantly, because it's like you say, it's easy to forget when you're like, no, it's okay. Normally when they're saying that, I've still got 5 minutes till I need to go up to the wings. It's fine.
yeah,
But
right. You've got less time.
yeah, so
But changes and things as well.
yeah, so if you're listening all the time, then you're like, okay, right. So I know that when they get to this bit, they've cut out that joke, and that actually is usually my 30 seconds to get from there to here. So I'll need to just go now, and just keep listening, keep your wits about you, because it is live, anything can happen.
I know. Right. So that, do you know, I was just thinking that in my head. Tell us, you've got to tell us something as a performer, whether it was in Panto or whether it's in something else. Tell us when something has gone wrong.
Probably the best thing that's ever happened during a show would be it was during Panto at Adam Smith, and a pigeon came down from the roof and was just wandering around the stage.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and it wasn't scared at all. Our dame was right up singing "Feed the Birds" at this pigeon. And we were all just like, well, what do we do? Because then, of course, if you went up and started clapping at it or whatever, you thought, was it then just going to go right out over the audience and be like,
what, then if you can't get it back, it would just destroy the whole show, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah. So
how did they get rid of it in the end?
It just, thankfully, it just kind of it took its own little bow and then went back up to wherever it came from. It was like, okay, that's fine. I've had my moment.
I've just done my moment now. Oh wow! Yeah. I was once in a Panto when a duck fell off the stage, but it was somebody dressed as a duck. Yeah, it was somebody dressed as a duck. They were in a huge duck costume. Her name was Fiona Alford, and her boyfriend was in the audience for the first time. And this duck was in Widow Twankey's laundry basket and had to get up. And the gag was that they had to get up and run to the back of the stage, but they got up with a blanket over them and they had like a big beak like this. And Wishy-Washy and the Widow Twankey and everything, they all fell over, but she got disorientated and stood up the wrong way round, and her beak was like this, and she ran like you would normally run, thinking she was going up stage, ran off the stage. And like our feet went, and then she just went,
like a proper carpet.
You saw the head of the costume on the drum kit going like this on the video, And but kids in the audience go, way, like that.
Brilliant.
But she felt, and then the audience reaction goes, and then they realized it. And but actually, if she hadn't had that costume on, she would have been really hurt. But after that, they all looked around and they said, well, the show must go on, get the costume off her. And they looked around and they thought, who can we put it on? And I was playing the genie. I was 14. And I was covered in green paint. But because I was only on at the end of Act 1 and I'd been in all the rehearsals, I was put in the duck. So I was put in the duck for the rest of the act. So it's not a pigeon, it's a duck. Yeah. All these foul stories. We're in Panto season, Kim, come on, follow. So just, I'm going to link from Panto at this time of year to your vocal work.
Yes.
And something you touched on, that, you know, you've got to look after yourself, sustain that voice throughout performances. Your voice is your paycheck, I suppose, as well, come weddings and celebrations and everything as well. What do you do, having been a professional paid singer for 13, 14 years now? How do you keep that going?
I partly think it's because the whole time I've been a professional singer, I've kept up the use of it. So God knows how it's going to sound after this year. I'll be like, I don't know.
I mean, that's a serious thing for people watching and listening. Do you have a kind of regime that you follow daily or weekly or anything when you are gigging and working?
Before gigs, I've now started doing warm-ups because there was a wee while where I was having issues with my voice, and I think it was just because I was just firing right into gigs and not doing any sort of warm-up. But I'm obsessed with drinking water, so that's always a thing. And yet, like, remembering that it is a muscle and you have to treat it like you would treat any other muscle in your body. Like, if it's tired, rest it. If you are using it, you warm up, you cool down, and just make sure that you're not, if you've got a gig, you know, don't be out drinking until 5 in the morning.
I mean, that's a serious thing. It's, I suppose, it's performers, you're not a machine, so you won't just press a button and it will happen. But if you're being paid to come up with the goods, you know what I mean, by time and time again, and looking after it. Well, we're talking to Donna in a couple of weeks as well. So one thing I'll be asking is, there you go, you get paid to be, you know, if you're belting out Mama Morton in the West End night after 8 shows a week, how do you know, you can't come in 3 days later and say, oh, I did it massive, you know, it was huge, but I've really got a croak now. How do you look after that product? Wow. Yeah,
and it's like, you want to give your all every single night, but if there's a night where you're thinking, if I go for that tonight, it's going to be terrible, or and I can feel that if I really push it there, that tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, I'll be out of the show, or I'll be out, I'll have no voice. You just have to take
choices as a singer then.
Yeah, you just have to be sensible with it. It's not, as much as individually singers can beat themselves up about their own performances and be like, that wasn't up to scratch, that wasn't, oh, I sang it better last night. If you're trying your best and you're giving your all, but without pushing yourself to the point of injury or damage or anything like that, it's one moment in the room with all the people, you know. So if it isn't right there, but it sounds really emotive, or if it's, especially in theatre, obviously, sometimes little things like that can be like the special little moments. And
live. And I remember going to see something. I can't remember what I think it was actually Wicked, and I've only seen Wicked once, and I enjoyed it, and at the time I went to see it. But I remember thinking, and it was Idina Menzel that was playing it. Sorry, Idina, if you're watching. But I'm going to say this. But when she did like the end of Defying Gravity and everything like that, immediately my ear went, oh, doesn't sound as good there. And it's because you're so used to listening to a cast recording or something, you're so familiar with it. But obviously any great performer is not knocking out the same thing every night. That would be boring as well. You're reading an audience, you're feeling the moment, you're doing something slightly different with it. But again, a lot of it's looking after and sustaining a performance, I suppose.
Yeah, and just respecting the fact that, you're human, and you've got to give a certain quality of performance every night. You couldn't go out and be like, yeah, it's ever gonna bring me down. Like, you couldn't just get away with that, but yeah,
you've got to give it something. Right.
Yeah,
okay, I've got a couple of quick fire things I'm going to just throw at you here. These might be related to your job, they might not be at all. Okay, so a little kind of quick fire thing. Ready. And then I'm going to ask you a wee thing about 2 shows that you ended up in very quickly without even knowing about.
Right.
Okay. So here's our quick fire round. Ready? Okay, to go and watch plays or musicals?
Musicals.
For you, yeah. Why?
Just because I like the fan.
That's good then. Good. Okay, to be in musicals, plays, or films?
Films.
Oh, really? Now, tell us why. Why?
I don't know. That came from, I think because because of like relating back to an earlier answer, because musicals have always been an escape for me.
Ah, okay.
And I, like, for example, years ago, Phantom's my favourite musical, and I got the offer of going to audition for it.
Ellen Jackson's being interviewed on Monday night. Do you know Ellen?
I don't know who she is, but I know who she is, but I don't know her.
She has played the wardrobe mistress in Phantom and understudied Madame Genie for 22 years.
She's been in it every time I've seen it.
Oh, she's fab as well.
So, like, when I saw her name pop up, I was like,
musical films, yeah.
Yeah. So like when I got the audition in for Phantom, I couldn't go because I thought, if I go to this and mess it up, that's it.
Oh wow, that would have been Phantom for you.
That would have been it, done for me.
Oh god, I was the same with Les Mis. I thought, no, give it to Alfie. Give it to Alfie. Another question here. Strictly or The Voice?
Strictly.
Are you strictly? Everybody's strictly. It's more Matthew Bourne than Matthew Kelly. We're watching the dance things here. Okay.
Only if I got paired with Gorka.
If you got paired with Gorka. Yeah, if you got paired with Gorka. Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
Pizza or pasta. Slow sing or faster? What do you like singing? Slow things or faster things?
Fast
things as well. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to ask you scariest stage experience. Mind you, you've been haunted by a pigeon, so I don't know if
haunted. Oh, scariest.
It might be something going wrong, or it might have been a spooky happening, or anything.
Oh, I'd love a spooky happening, but that's not happened. Oh, I don't know. I think the scariest things probably relate to what you're about to ask me about.
Okay, so I am going to ask you about 2 things, and I did have a wee chat with you before about this. I know that you ended up in 2 pro shows, like at the drop of a hat, and one was Glasgow Girls, and one was Beyond the Barricade. Do you want to tell us what happened?
Glasgow Girls was I had a bit more notice for that because...
Is that at the Hydro? No.
Yeah, we did the Hydro, and I finished the run when it was at the Sits last as well. And so I'd been in rehearsals for Glasgow Girls, but just as a body in the room to cover for one of the girls who she lost a family member and had to go home to go to the funeral, but they just needed someone. She'd done the show previously, so she knew it. They just needed someone to be her and move around so that they could put the new girls into it.
Okay.
So that's what I was brought in to do, and I was like, well, this is great because I don't have the pressure of going on stage at the end of it. Brilliant. I can take a bit of get the payment from, and I get a wee foot in the door with NTS. That's amazing, but the pressure's off me because I'm not going on stage at the end of the rehearsals. The show went up. I went to see it and I'm going, that's brilliant, love it. And then one afternoon I got a phone call saying that one of the main cast had put her back out, and the only person that they could think of to go in and cover for her was me. They were like, so what are you doing tonight? And I was like,
tonight?
Yeah. So I went through to Glasgow that afternoon. I had a really quick costume fitting, handed the script, and went on that night for Rosa and Glasgow Girls. So yeah, and then that, like, I'm saying thankfully, I'm like, thankfully Juliana's back was done, so she didn't get, like, unfortunately for Juliana, her back did not get better, so I got to finish the run. But woohoo for me.
Incredible. So just the call on the day, but it's not like you were understudying her and that was even in your head that day.
No,
you end up on stage that night.
Yeah, and there was, like, because it's NTS, a lot of people whose careers I really respect and I've seen in other things, I knew they're the types that would be in the audience things, and I was like, I can't make a mess of this otherwise.
Crazy.
Wow. And then
but a similar thing happened with Beyond the Barricade.
Yeah, so one morning I got up.
You're not going around doing folks' backs in or something on the
side. No, I'm just kicking people in the shins
one more and I've got an eye on you, tell you. Else says, oh, I've got a bad back. Have you been near Kim Shepherd?
So I got a phone call one morning to say that the UK tour of Beyond the Barricade was on its way up to the Playhouse, and one of their singers, Becky, had the flu, and she'd struggled through the show the night before, but there was no way that she was going to be able to go on and sing the show tonight. And they went, it's like, what do you think? And I was like, what do you mean, what do I think? Like,
take some honey and
yeah, I'm like, oh, have a nap, like, I don't know.
Chicken soup. Yeah.
Aye. So they were like, no, can you get to the Playhouse it was like 12 o'clock, and they will all arrive not long after that, and then you can start. While they were, like, building the show around us and doing the get into the Playhouse and things, we were all down. I was, like, learning the show, and then went on that night.
So it wasn't just solo numbers you were dropped into of your choice. You were actually part of was it an ensemble or a?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Gosh.
And then I got to do it again in Dundee a couple of nights later, which was a little bit more settled, but because at least I was like, well, I've done it once before, I can do it again. But those are probably the scariest moments I've ever had.
Absolutely. Did you learn anything from those moments though about yourself, and did they benefit you in any career way? Because I suppose you could have said, absolutely not. Like, I'm terrified, petrified, and you would have been well within your rights to do that, but you did it.
Yeah. And it's because as much as it was terrifying, the feeling, like, when I finished Glasgow Girls, I got back in the car, like the first night that I finished that, I got back in the car and cried all the way from Glasgow back to Dunfermline, because I was like, I can't believe I've just done that.
That's brilliant. Happy tears.
Yeah, like, it was that way where I thought, because I come from a musical theatre background, and I never really thought that my type of performing would be the sort of thing that would get me into a National Theatre of Scotland show. I thought, oh, I'm two jazz hands. Then it was that way where I was like, Kim, you've just done it. You've just performed with NTS. That's done. Like, that's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it was more of a personal, like, wow, you're actually capable of more than you thought, more than you think you are. If you're really terrified, turns out sometimes good things can happen.
Amazing. Just to wrap up, I'm going to ask you now, what would you say are the hardest things about the career that you've chosen, and the most rewarding things? And what would you say to a young person that's considering a similar career to one that you followed?
So the hardest things I would say is that it can be a very antisocial job, because you'll miss weddings, you'll miss things like family gatherings, you'll miss all sorts because of your chosen career path, and that can sometimes be quite hard to deal with if you're particularly close to your friends and your family. You want to be at all the things that you see everybody at on Facebook, but you can't, because you have a show to do,
or you're working at nights.
Or you have a rehearsal, or because you have a show that night, you can't go out that day because you're working at night, you know. So things like that, like the sacrifices that you have to make can be difficult sometimes, but it's rewarding because, you know, since I was little, I've wanted to do this. And as much as, yeah, I haven't sort of walked right into being in any West End shows or anything, which is okay. Like, I'm okay with that now.
Yet as well. Let's rule anything out.
Because my focus has changed, you know, I'm okay with that. But I do feel like I'm living the dream. You know, I'm not living in a massive house. And
you're a paid professional vocalist, aren't you? And
what I said I wanted to be when I was little is what I'm doing.
Auditioning for films, everything. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and as much as it's not, you know, I'm not like, you know, hugely successful, but I'm happy.
That's important. And what would you say to like someone thinking about it then?
If you can see yourself doing that and only that, go for it. If you're thinking, I love that, but I also really like maths, or I really like, if there's something else, then keep it as a hobby. Keep it as something that's purely for your enjoyment, that you can escape the everyday from, and go and you have a sing and it feels great. And because it does change the passion for it a little bit when it becomes a career, as opposed to something purely just for fun. But
you can have both then, yeah,
and you can have both, and you can enjoy it, and you can use it as something that's like, oh, this is great, and I don't have to think about it. But look after yourself. Look at, like, you know, whether you're a dancer. If you're a dancer, look after your body, your feet. If you're a singer, look after your voice. Always watch, listen.
Yeah.
Because you never
learn by listening and watching other things all the time. Yeah.
And watch things go and see things that you wouldn't maybe choose to see. Go out of your comfort zone a wee bit, because you just never know what you might pick up or who you might meet, or just keep an open mind. Keep an open mind and go for it. And
you never know when you might get that phone call at 12 o'clock during the day.
Exactly. Always be prepared. Always have something.
Always have your legs shaved, ready to go.
Always have your legs shaved.
In case you get that call. Who knows? Kim, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Do you know what? It's just like a chat with friends here. And all the last interviews as well have just been so honest, and that's what we're wanting to do here. It's not, I have this and I did that and did. I think we want to hear the real reality of individuals' experiences and things. And I think that's so valuable. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks to anyone who watched.
It's so nice to see you, and good luck as well. Got everything crossed for you as well. But remember, dear viewers, if you do hear of people with injured backs and Kim Shepherd then headlining shows, we are on to her. Okay.
Well done, Kim. Well done.
So we will speak to you soon. We'll get your video up as soon as possible. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Kim.
That was wonderful. Well done, kids.